Welcome to Talkin Jets. My name's Ryan, and I'll be your pilot tonight. I am joined alongside my lovely co-pilot, Mr. Dom C, fresh off the Senior Bowl. Dom, how you doing tonight?
I'm good, brother. Happy to be here. Happy to be talking draft with you, my friend.
The inception of this show started Talkin Jets draft, and we'll actually be able to use the logo for that show moving forward after this week. Once we talk about our Senior Bowl prospects and things like that, we're going to go into a top 10 list of players the Jets should be looking at from the Senior Bowl that Dom was able to see with his own eyes, talk with a bunch of people that were there at the Senior Bowl. We're going to get into that in about 5 or 10 minutes or so. But before then, I do want to just get your thoughts, Dom, on the Senior Bowl in general. Any rumors that you heard? It doesn't have to be Jet related, just things that are kind of swirling around the scouting sphere, names that you think might be rising, or maybe just trades that could be happening. There's a lot of, rumors that get spread around here and also at the Combine, but this is kind of the kickoff to the offseason. So anything interesting that you hear down in Mobile?
Listen, I got some interesting information. I shouldn't say it like that. Like, I got some buzz on definitely on some players that were of interest. And when I say of interest for the Jets, you got to remember, or maybe you guys don't know. Maybe I'm repeating something that's common knowledge. I don't know, but when these guys go to the Senior Bowl, they go through pretty much the gamut. They meet, for a specific amount of time, however long it is, 15, 20, 30 minutes with each and every team. And some of it is just, kind of like nice to meet you kind of thing, trying to get a feel for them. And then there are, further conversations that are requested, more formal interviews, if you like. Now I didn't get, I did speak with some, I spoke in depth with a lot of the players. I think, Brian, you saw, obviously, and maybe others did. I put out little mini interviews with probably about 15 or 20 guys. Now a lot more conversations happened off of the camera, per the they don't want to spill, they're coached and very well put together on what they say on film and what they don't. But there's definitely a couple guys that have met numerous times with scouts, some of them with Phil Savage, and I'll say this, one guy who wasn't shy about saying, yep, I've met and I've talked and I've been with them a couple times, was the defensive tackle out of Florida State, Jordan Farmer. He was very, very, very interesting guy, very vocal in his, wish, if you will, his New York being one of his, preferred destinations to land. Obviously, we don't have any control of that. He doesn't have any control of that. But I thought for nothing more, and I'm not saying anything that I know he didn't tell me or he asked me not to, not to release, but he was pretty open to saying, hey, that's a place I want to be. That's a team, he has a relationship with, Jermaine Johnson, and all those things go alike. Outside of that, there were some other things and some other grumblings, and once more things become formal, I'll make sure I get the okay and update my spreadsheet so everyone is in the know with that stuff. But the other thing, the other big buzz that was going around there was, there's some other stuff about the prospects, which I'll get into more as we break down or when we get into our, little 1 through 10 through 1 breakdown. But, the big buzz was the quarterbacks, man. Like what's going to happen. The people are all over the place with this quarterback class. And I think the consensus feel is that it's a little bit more of a down year in terms of the quarterback. And, we all know how important the position is and how likely guys get pushed up the realm and kind of overdrafted. Quarterbacks always get overdrafted. So the one takeaway I got on the quarterback class is that there is such a variance in where people see quarterbacks 3 through 7. And some people think that they're all clumped together. Some like guys more than others, and some feel in the little niche world that I live in, some guys really feel that a lot of the hype around some of these quarterbacks is really, agent or NFL driven. So you hear a lot of good things about some guys, you hear not so good things about other guys, and it's really, agent driven. It's smoke season, man. So you don't know what's really true, but the feeling I get is that this is probably since 2022. Was that the Kenny Pickett year?
I believe so. Yeah, it was the year after
you know,
Zach.
yeah, that class was was pretty bad, and this one's probably right up there with it in terms of variance on where people see fit with the quarterbacks. Because listen, last year's quarterback class was great, and for the most part, you knew who the top 5 or 6 guys were. You might have had them in a different order, like you might have liked Caleb first, and I might have liked Dre May first, but you knew that they were all consensus at the top, and even that next tier, the JJs and the Penix and Bo Nix, people had them in different kind of orders, but you knew who there was. That feeling is in the evaluation world is not the same. I mean, there's guys who think Will Howard's the best quarterback in this class. There's guys who think Tyler Shuck, the 26-year-old from Louisville, is the 3rd best quarterback in the class. There's guys that think, that there shouldn't be one taken within the top 50 picks. So the variance on this quarterback class is really the main takeaway, and really a really big talking point of what was going on down in Mobile.
Yeah, I feel like the quarterbacks, especially with Ward not going down there, you had Milroe, you had Gabriel, you had Dart, lots of guys to kind of chew over while you're watching them for that entire week. So I think that's a good jumping off point. Let's hop into the top 10 list that we've compiled for players that the Jets should be looking at that were at the Senior Bowl. You had this one at number 10, Don. Tell us a little bit about Jamari Caldwell.
So, yeah, and listen, this is not these are just guys I think would be really good fits for the Jets. Whether or not they're targets, real targets or not, I have no idea. These are just guys that I think would fit. And obviously, we still don't know what's going on with Aaron Rodgers. We still don't know what's going on with Devontae Adams. We still don't know, really the is it going to be Aaron Glenn's defense? Is it going to be Steve Wilkes' defense? Is it going to be a blend of both? Who knows? So we're still so far out of really honing in. These are just guys that I think would fit holes and needs for us. And Jamari Caldwell, got to be honest with you, I didn't really, he's a guy that I earmarked to go back and rewatch because I was a little bit lower on him. And, he really showed out in Mobile. He's just built different, 340 pounds, 6'3". He's stocky. He's that true, two gap in type of nose tackle that you want next to that one gap, one pressure guy that Q is. Like he's a really good compliment for it. But for a guy at 340 pounds, he moves like a gazelle, man. And I didn't think, and I was, even though it's not as developed in a very deep defensive tackle class, he's not as developed of a pass rusher as some of the other guys. He does a really good job of it, and he's just strong as an ox. He doesn't get moved off his mark. He splits through duos or those double team blocks with ease. And for a guy who's known to be more of that one tech run stuff in defense tackle, I thought he had some giddy up and a nice little pass rush toolbox. So he's an interesting guy. I don't think he's going to be a day 1 or 2 pick, just because these types usually aren't, unless you're very, very special. He's got some athletic limitations. I don't think he's the best athlete out there, but he's a guy that if you wanted to fill a depth role and hopefully develop somebody into a rotational or an every down early down player, I think Jamari Caldwell would really fit that bill. It's very impressive this week.
Now, give me a ballpark idea of where you think he's projected. I'm looking at Draft Buzz right now. They have him anywhere from the 182nd best prospect to the 287th best prospect. So this feels like a very late round swing right now. Guys don't really have him dialed in yet.
Yeah, I don't, and I think that's because of the role that he plays. I think he'll go earlier than that. Like I'd probably say, he'll be off the board somewhere in round 4 or round 5.
Phil comes in and says, Dom, most likely blue chip player that falls to the Jets at 7. Kind of
Hard
run
to
through it
say.
real quick. Like, is
Yeah,
it
hard.
Like quarterback 1, quarterback at 3 probably. Travis is going to be gone.
Well, I will say this: I don't necessarily that whole blue chip player thing is really objective or subjective, I should say. I only think there's one elite blue chip player in this entire class, and that's Abdul Carter, who I don't think he's going here, falling to us. So
he might go
Phil.
too.
I think if they trade,
Garrett.
if they trade Garrett, he'll definitely go too. I think he's still in. I'm not 100% sold. I'm probably like 90% sold. That a quarterback will go 1. They very well might just take the best player available, and you can make an argument that that's Abdul Carter. So yeah.
So let's
there's
say this,
a tier.
not blue chipper, but like those 7 players that people consistently kind of talk about in the top 7. Which one do you think ultimately falls down to the Jets?
I think the best chance, that one of that group, that tier, the best chance that somebody falls is Will Johnson out of Michigan, and I think he's phenomenal. I think Will Johnson's as good of a talent as any of those 7 in this class. He's got some medical red flags. He missed the majority of the season. He played the beginning of the season hurt and missed the majority of the season with what they just diagnosed as a lower leg injury. They never really came clear. He played on it through the year, so I know it's not like a ligament, like an ACL or anything like that. My guess is probably, and this is strictly a guess, it was probably some sort of high ankle sprain or Liz Frank foot injury that he was able to weather the storm early on, and probably it just got too much, and once Michigan was out of it relatively quickly. They weren't vying to repeat as national champs, so his camp probably just told him to pack it in. So if I had to say, out of that top 7 crew, the 2 quarterbacks and the other 5 guys, I'd probably say Will Johnson is the most likely to be there available at 7 because of the injury.
Hennessy comes in and says, Dom, cornerback, safety position, do you see us getting our new starters in the draft or free agency? Also, what young would you target? What maybe round would you target them? I want a ball hawk, says Hennessy.
Yeah. So quarterback and safety, I think, are going to be vital in this new defense. Wilkes predominantly used them in many different situations. Again, a very deceptive defense that he runs, shows a look pre-snap, flips into switch something, into a different look post-snap. A lot of disguised coverages, a lot of simulated pressures. He uses the safeties in the corners to blitz a lot. He does a lot of those lightning and thunder stunts. So I think you're going to see a combination of both, Hennessy. If I had to guess, I think you're going to probably pluck some guys through the draft, and I think you're going to have to bring in some veteran kind of guys to stabilize and really understand what's a nuanced defense for Wilkes on the back end.
All right, let's jump into number 9 here. You got Jeffrey Bassa. How you feeling with the linebacker at Oregon?
Very good. So Mobile is really weird for the linebackers and the safeties because the practices are not really contact. They bang up front. Even when they go 11-11, they go live. Like the linemen get at it, but the linebackers, you don't hit the quarterbacks. You don't touch quarterbacks. You don't tackle the running backs. You're really playing 2-hand touch from anything outside of the line of scrimmage. So you really can't see the linebackers or the safeties, their real true value. So with your eyes, what I'm looking at when I'm looking at the linebackers, when I'm looking at the safeties, is I'm looking how fluid they move. I'm looking how they move. Are they stiff? Do their hips open up? Can they stack and shed, meaning, get through the blockers in a phone booth and scrape sideline to sideline. Bassett, I thought his film was very good, and I thought he moved ridiculously good on the field. He was a 2-year captain. He's a real cerebral type of player. I think he's got coverage ability. I think he's not scheme specific. I love the fact that he can move sideline to sideline like a gazelle, but really goes downhill, in those run fits and can really support the run. And he's a very, very short tackler as well. So he's a guy that I had my eyes on, and he's definitely a guy that I think could play a role relatively early in a linebacking core that also could be decimated by free agency, because we don't know what's going to happen with Sherwood. We don't know what's going to happen with CJ Mosley. We don't know if Zaire Barnes can withstand a full season. So it's a linebacker room that's going to need an influx of talent as well. I think he could go as high as round 3. Maybe even sneak into the end of the second round, although I don't. I think that round 3, round 4 spot is probably a safe play for a guy like Bassett, and really for most of the guys in this, in this off-ball linebacker class.
Number 8, we got Jaden Higgins, wide receiver out of Iowa State. Jets could be in a weird position as far as wide receiver goes. Devontae Adams potentially not coming back if Rodgers isn't here. Garrett Wilson and Malachi Corley seemingly the top 2 options for the Jets next year, with Lazard likely getting cut as well. What are your thoughts on the wide receiver position? The name I was kind of hoping you'd throw out at that number 7 super chat that we were talking about was Tet McMillan. How does Jaden Higgins either differentiate himself from what we currently have, or how does he complement the receivers we currently have?
So I think he's when Jaden Higgins plays, he's your true boundary guy. He's that prototypical big-bodied X-build receiver, right? He's not, carries almost 6'4", 210, 215 pounds. I liken his play very similar to a skill set like Courtland Sutton, right? That big receiver can go up and get the ball. He's a true boundary guy. He's deceptively quick for a big guy. He's kind of a long strider. He's got ridiculously short hands, under a 2% drop rate, throughout his last 2 years of college. He started a small school. I think he was a transfer from Eastern Kentucky or Western Kentucky, one of those smaller schools. But he runs routes very well. I love the way he sinks into his break and at the top of the stem. Again, not the quickest guy. You question those guys who are a little bit limited in their short area quickness, how they're going to be able to get off press. And I think that's going to be the big question for him. He struggled day one. I'm calling it what it is. Now, you take it with a grain of salt, because a lot of these guys haven't played football in 2 months, right? And they're dealing with a whole new set of quarterbacks throwing the ball, a whole new system, trying to install a pro-level offense. But he's got the makings of everything in that sure possession type receiver. Think, like I said, Courtland Sutton, I think, is a really good comp if you like the comp thing. Think of an early career Kenny Golladay, where a guy is not going to burn you straight on that, on that go route. He's not going to run by you all the time, but he's heady and he's nuanced enough to know how to get open, can go up and get the ball, has a really big catch radius. He's a guy that's moved not because of the Senior Bowl, but it's kind of since the summer till now has kind of risen up my board. I have him as my 6th rated wide receiver in the class right now. Probably going to cost a day 2 pick to get him. And that might be, where we stand at 40 or 41. Some might think that's a little rich. I don't know if it's necessarily that rich, to be honest with you, because I think he's a perfect complement to what you have in Garrett.
That makes me feel good, because I feel like the receivers I was kind of looking at, it was like, man, there's not that boundary guy that I want to see towards the top. So to see this guy elevate, it looks like Draft Buzz has him anywhere from that 2nd to 3rd round. PFF has him the highest graded right now at pick, overall prospect 55, Draft Tech 58, Draft Buzz 71, ESPN has him at 73, and Mid DB has him at 78. So those will
I'll say
fluctuate a little
this.
bit.
Yeah, I'll say this, Ryan. We pick at 41 and then what, 90 or something, whatever the end of the third
It's
round.
over a round of
Yeah.
gap between pick 2 and pick 3 for us.
And why I say, you'd probably have to take him at the second round, even though that might be, to the consensus, that might seem high based on those numbers, but he won't be there when we pick in our third round pick.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're talking having to trade up. That's what's so rough about losing that third round pick, and then getting it back, because it's remember, it's the Lions' third round pick, so it's before the comp picks, but it's one of the final 4, or I guess not final 4, final 6 picks in that round. So something to keep an eye on. Next up, we got a favorite of mine, 𝐂𝐲𝐬 𝐂, the offensive tackle from Boston College, plays a little bit of left tackle, a little bit of right tackle, even has a little bit of guard play in there at some point. I really like this dude a lot in the mid rounds, call it third, fourth round, whatever it is. If you can get him to back up Olu Fashanu and potentially be the starter, even if you bring back Morgan Moses for a year, you can have this guy kind of learn for a season behind him. I like that he's on your list. I'm not sure if you put him on there purely because I'm excited about him, or if because you actually think that he should be on this list. So what are your thoughts on 𝐂𝐲𝐬?
No, I definitely think he should be on this list. He's a guy that I thought was super impressive. And there's tons of guys, and you can listen to 20 different guys who were down there, and you'll hear probably 30 different names of guys who they were really impressed with. But for me, you look at this tackle class, and I'd say as a whole, Ryan, the tackle class, this tackle draft class is less than stellar. That's just my opinion. There's guys that are going to play, and there's really good, there's good guys, but there's no alts, there's no Fashanus, there's no Lathams, there's none of those guys in this class. This class is some high talent, some good talent, some high athletic guys that come with a lot of faults, and you have the majority of them are, we're good tackles in college, but they probably are or might have to turn into guards at the next level. So and there's the top end talent just isn't there. I don't think I have a tackle rated in this class in my top 20 or my top 25. So a guy like Trapillo, he really, really impressed. 6'7.5". He gained some weight. He put some muscle on for, he was working out hard after the season, getting ready for Senior Bowl and Combine, all that stuff. So, there was some questions about him being a little light in the ass, if you will, but I think he, proved that differently. He definitely packed on a little muscle, but he moves so well. For a guy that big, he moves so well. What I like about him is a couple things. One, I think that he is a pure tackle. I don't know if you put him at left tackle, but I think he can come in even as a third round pick. I think he can come in and really play, and really push to play early in his career as a right tackle. He played a lot of right tackle at Boston College. Played some left tackle as well, like you talked about.
I think he has 2 years starting at right tackle. I'm pretty sure that's what I remember.
Yeah, but so he has that familiarity. He moves so well. He moves well in space. And what I really wanted to see is, and you did see it, to an extent in the Senior Bowl, and not so much on, it was hit or miss a little bit on tape, but he's got a lot of power in his game. He's really effective on those down blocks. It's not like there's a lot of guys that you think of, even, and I'm not comparing him to Olu, but, think about when we were talking about Olu, you knew, the consensus thought that Olu was going to come in and really be able to, be a true bookend, blindside in pass protection, a good pass protector, but you question on what he would do against the run. I had a lot of the same feelings about Trapillo, and he proved a lot of that wrong. I thought he was, he was very, very impressive to me in the one-on-ones and in the game situation. He's 6'7.5". If there's any faults to him is that he can play. Obviously, he can play high sometimes. So, he has a tendency, or he can struggle at times with pad level and winning those leverage battles. But he's a guy, one of the few in this class who I think is a pure tackle. And which is why I put him on the list. I did a little show with Boy Green this morning, and I plucked Trapillo in the second round. Now that's probably a little rich again, but he's one of those guys that, he could make it to where we sit at the end of the third round, but maybe not, and again, in the exercise that we're doing, I really wanted to secure a tackle. So I took him. I really, really like everything about him. He's headstrong. He's an East Coast guy. He's a Northeast guy. So, understands what it's like to play in high pressure situations, understands the cold. You don't have to worry about anything like that. He grew up a Patriots fan. I won't hold that against him, but he's a really good prospect.
He's someone that I feel like when I did my mock off season with Rodgers like not returning or whatever, I had the Jets trading up using some of our mid-round picks from our third-round pick to go up and get him. Because I agree with you. I think he doesn't make it to that third-round pick because of how far down that is. So you might have to overdraft in the second round, which is a little worrisome, I guess.
Well, the only caveat to that, and the only good thing is, again, I don't know how the meat and potatoes of this offensive line class, both at the tackle and interior, is really between rounds 2 and 5. Like that's where the good value is. So you could see some of those guys that, you're seeing consistently mocked early, in the top 15 or, in that 15 to 30, you could see some of those guys get pushed down because I think NFL teams and front officers are going to know that they can pass on, prospect A in round 1 because, they're comfortable taking prospect B or C who they'll know will be there later. So if that happens enough with enough teams, the talent gets pushed down. So there's a possibility that Trapillo's height is not going to be, everyone's cup of tea. So that might take him off of some board. So there's a chance that he's pushed down there. Again, I don't know if he's necessarily an absolute, like, write it down in ink that he's plug and play right tackle, but I think he's got a chance to compete.
Number 6, we got another guy for the offensive line, Miles Frazier out of LSU, the guard tackle. Talk to us a little bit about him.
If there's anybody in this offensive line class that I have kind of planted my flag on way before the Senior Bowl, way during the season, it was Miles Frazier. This guy reminds me, and you knew my love and infatuation for J.C. Latham last year. This guy reminds me of that physical presence that J.C. Latham brought to the field as well. The tenacity he plays with. He's arguably, maybe behind Will Campbell, who was his teammate, as a matter of fact, for 3 years in college or 2 years in college. He's arguably the best interior pass protector in the country. That's not a problem. I know that's part of his game. He's physical. He can, for a big guy, he moves very well in terms of the power game, where when you're running counter and you want to have him kick out or something like that, he's really, really good. He's strong as an ox. Once he latches onto you, the game is over. I love the tenacity he plays with, that he finishes his blocks. He's a top 50 player for me. And I'm much higher than the consensus on him. He's a top 50 player for me. This is a guy that I think will come in. And listen, even though he's a top 50 player for me, doesn't necessarily that doesn't mean that he's going to go in the top 50. But I think that he can come in and pay dividends right away for wherever he goes. And the beautiful thing is, like I said, I've been high on him for a while, and I've loved his tape. His tape is just dominant. Whatever game you turn on, plays. He's nimble enough. He's a little clunky because he's a big guy, but he's nimble enough to get into the second level and wall off and reach linebackers. He does a phenomenal job displacing, really getting into the hip of the defensive lineman and moving them off their spots. There's just so much power in his play style that I think that type of player and that type of mindset, real confident kid too, not cocky, but like really confident. That type of player is going to be something that teams really strive for. I think he can come in and play right away. He did so good in the first 2 days of practices in Mobile that the coaches the NFL teams asked for him to move outside and kick and take reps at tackle. So day 3, and during the game on Saturday, he played predominantly tackle, and he held up he held up well at tackle as well. He's just a really, really phenomenal player. I love Miles Frazier. Now, I still think that his best spot will be inside. And, as constituted right now, the Jets have two starting guards, right? In AVT and Simpson. But you don't have a third, and you have Simpson on one more year. And really, realistically, you only have AVT for one more year. So I think the interior loading or putting another guy in here, whether he starts right away or not, getting a guy that can play is going to be of paramount importance.
JMO asks about his WVU buddy, Wyatt Milam. How you feeling about him on the interior part of the offensive line or offensive line?
So I loved Wyatt Milam. He was one of, I think I had 13, maybe 14 first round grades assigned to this entire class, or at least the guys that I've gotten through so far. Wyatt Milam was one of them. His film is as technically sound as could be. He's actually a guy that I got to sit down and really talk to, for a good 10 or 15 minutes. Really nice guy. And he said something interesting to me. And I don't know if he said it I did an interview with him. I don't remember if he said it in the interview or not, but he said, yeah, he's like, I'm here to play center and guard. And I said, but Wyatt, I said, you played 3 years, you started at left tackle for 3 consecutive years. He let up 6 pressures over those 3 years and 1 sack. He hasn't let up a sack in 2 years. I said, what are you doing? And he's like, well, he's like, exactly that. He's like, they got 4 years of film at me at tackle. I want to show the NFL how versatile I am. So he's never snapped before. He took center snaps in Mobile and just played guard. Now, he struggled at times. He was very up and down. But I think his build, I think his power profile, and the fact that he's, got those AVT sub 32-inch arms is going to kind of prohibit him from being a permanent tackle in the league. It's not, his length is going to keep him off of some boards as a tackle completely. So I think he can transition to guard. I thought his film was much better than what he played at Mobile. So, and the film is always king. So I'm confident that he'll be a player in the league.
All right. Now we start getting into some of the fun and frisky kind of players, I feel like. Number 5, Jackson Dart coming in here for you. How you feeling about Dart as it stands with all the quarterbacks that were down there?
Well, again, like I said, I put this list together. We put this list together on guys that I think would be fits for the Jets. Jackson Dart is one of those polarizing guys. He's one of those guys that the media, the rumor is that the media is trying to hype up to really make him quarterback 3. Truth is that he wasn't very impressive during the 3 days of practice. None of the quarterbacks were. The bar was set really low. I thought he played well in the game. But during the practice, there was, all the faults that he had on film showed up, during the practice sessions in time. I think Jackson Dart has a really good chance, I don't want to say really good. He has a chance to become a good starter in the NFL. It's not there yet. The mechanics need to be broken down from the bottom up. But he's got a live arm. He's sneaky athletic. He's not a guy that I would consider a true dual threat quarterback, but he's got like that Daniel Jones sneaky athleticism where he's gonna, you look at the end of the game, you're gonna look at the box score, and he's gonna have 10 rushes for 75 yards and a touchdown. He's got like that kind of athleticism. He can move. He's a former safety. He's got a good arm. I think he can make all the throws. I question the offense that he came out in Ole Miss. Very far from anything resembling a pro-style offense. Really, one read that Lane Kiffin would scheme open, on a mismatch, and that's what and that's where he hit. But he does have a live arm, and if he can figure out or work with a good quarterback coach and really fundamentally learn how to use the ground properly, use his feet, throw, step in and fire his hips to throw the ball. He has a chance to, follow along the path that Jordan Love did. There was a lot of the same questions about Jordan Love coming out of Nevada when he came out. Great arm, good athlete. Don't know what kind of offense, if his offensive acumen coming out of Nevada was going to translate into a pro style, and he needed a complete overhaul in his mechanics. It took him 3 years, and now he's what, a $50 million quarterback. Am I saying that's going to happen to Jackson Dart? I'm not. Is Jackson Dart a guy I would consider at 7? Absolutely not. But if he's there in round 2 or round 3, knowing that there's no quarterback on the board, he's a guy that I wouldn't be upset if we used one of those day capitals on and see if you can really put it all together. Because if he does put it all together, there's a chance he's got, the ceiling's pretty high. It's just the window to get to the ceiling is really small. It's got to have that perfect storm of everything to get there. So that's Dart.
We got Jack Bech, wide receiver TCU coming up.
Yeah.
Jack Bech. You like him?
Everyone knows the story of Jack Bech, right? Lost his brother in the New Orleans New Year's Day thing. Real sad. Was the star caught the game-winning touchdown with no time left on the clock at the Senior Bowl. Perfect story. Storyline. But all that aside, this guy's just a ball player. He's got a little bit of Cooper Kupp in him. He's got a little bit of Puka Nacua. He's a converted tight end. So he plays physical. He's 50-50 balls are ridiculous with him. He's just a guy. He's just a pure wide receiver. I don't know if he'll ever be a true number 1, but he's a guy that's gonna, like I said, is going to just figure out. He just figures out how to win each and every rep. Him being a tight end, formerly a tight end, he's a really good blocker as a slot. He's a power slot. I don't think he's got the foot speed or really the release package to play outside all the time. So he's going to be more slot dominant, but he's a guy that just catches everything you throw at him. And no situation is too big for Jack Bech. This is a guy that I think is flying up draft boards and is going to go relatively early. It would be a shock to me if he's not off the board in the top 50 picks. And I think he's going to be he's got the skill set to carve out a really, really good career for himself. Like I said, but Will Parkinson, good buddy. He likens him to Puka Nacua, that Puka Nacua rise that he had his last year through the Senior Bowl and into the NFL. Now, Puka was a 5th round pick. Jack Bech is going to go a lot higher than that, but I could see him making an impact on a team right from the get-go, just because he's just a football player, man, and a good story to read and a good story to root for.
NFL Draft Buzz. PFF has him at 56th overall. 33rd team has him 80th overall. Draft Tech 85. Draft Buzz 98. And MidDB 126. So kind of in that, second round according to PFF, but it seems like the consensus kind of has him in the 3rd round right now. I'd imagine as you get in front of him for the combine and some of those interviews and the way he kind of pops off from a metric standpoint might get you kind of excited to see his rise happen. Yeah. So looking forward to watching that. Jets going to have some need at the cornerback position. Azariah Thomas, cornerback at FSU, is someone we had high on our list here. What are your thoughts in the cornerback room for the Jets? DJ Reed seemingly gone via free agency. Eccles probably a coin flip. Does he follow Ulbrich? Does he go follow Solid? Does he try to go to the Giants and stay relatively local? They need some secondary help. Jets are going to be left with Sauce Gardner, Stiggers, and Michael Carter II. So where does cornerback fill out for you?
Again, knowing the defensive scheme switch, knowing the real lack of depth that you have in the room, I think it's going to be important. Whether it happens through the draft, early in the draft, or whether it happens through free agency and you plug a guy later, I don't know. But this is a guy that really sticks out, especially. He reminds me of the type of cornerbacks that Aaron Glenn and Steve Wilkes will probably covet. Tall, long, sticky in man coverage, really excels in man coverage. He's got ball skills. He's, a real high IQ kind of player. Just there's not the way he moves and his movement skills. He's able to match movements of the wide receivers, like, real easily, whether it's clicking and closing downhill, whether it's flipping his hips and opening up and running with them. Phenomenal. Like I said, really technically sound, always, even on plays where he might give up, might get beat or give up and play, playing catch up or make up, really strong with his hands, punching through the ball, so on and so forth, just consistently making plays left and right. He's a guy that I really like his film. I really liked what he did during this week in Mobile. And I think when you're talking schematic fits, there's probably no cornerback in this class that would fit better for what I'm assuming Glenn and Wilkes are going to look for in a cornerback than 𝐒𝐻 Thomas. And that's why I have him up here.
Now, where do we think he's going? Like, if he were to be a Jets pick, where would we have to take him?
Second round. Listen, could he sneak to the third? Yeah, but I don't think so. I think he's a second round pick all day.
Draft Buzz has that. Basically, that's exactly what you're kind of saying. 29th, 43, 47, 59, 74, 84, 89, 109. So it feels like it's trending closer to that second round, early third round. And with the Jets having such a late third round pick, it's going to be tough to envision some of these guys that we like falling that far down. It's possible, but might have to pull the trigger a little bit.
He might not even there's a chance, if his testing is, on the higher scale or near the, really good or elite level, there's a chance, I wouldn't be surprised to see him go at the end of first round, because there's tons of quarterback needy teams, whether it's Pittsburgh, whether it's the Rams, whether, you wonder if the Ravens are going to look for another cornerback. There's tons of Washington, there's tons of teams in that 20s area that Green Bay that could use quarterbacks, and he fits the bill, man. If you run a man heavy scheme and you want somebody that's going to be physical, that has ball skills and so on and so forth, like, there's only a few of those guys. He's one of those.
We got Darius Alexander, D tackle from Toledo. Talked D tackle a little bit earlier in this conversation. How you feeling about Alexander?
One of my favorite prospects in the entire class, and has been throughout the fall. I've tweeted about him in the past. Look out for this kid. A converted offensive lineman, about 320 pounds, moves like a gazelle. But the thing I think is most impressive about him, again, being an offensive lineman, think about when you're a tackle, what's the one thing that people always talk to you about, technically, is how to use your hands, right? How to ward off defenders, rushers with your hands and win those battles. He's now turning that knowledge in against the offensive tackle. So he has elite hand usage, which helps him immensely in his pass rush game. Another thing about Darius Alexander is you can play him at the nose tackle, you can play him out at defensive end. He took reps and beat tackles right around the edge, lining up on 2 feet in wide 9 formation. You literally can play him anywhere up and down the defensive line, and he's a playmaker. Consistently in the backfield on tape, consistently in the backfield during the Senior Bowls. One of the 3 or 4 best, winners, if you want to call them winners, during the week at Senior Bowl on the defense side of the ball. Just really, really good football player. If there's anything that you have to say negatively about him, like, he is still learning the position. So him trying to split double teams and get off of double teams, sometimes, he doesn't hold that 2-gap responsibility very well. He's definitely more of a pressure or a vertical style of player. Think of the type of defensive tackles that Robert Saleh liked. I know that's not the same now, but he wanted those guys that could really, press the pocket from the interior moving forward and, hold up enough during run defense. This, to me, would be the perfect guy in that scheme. But like I said, he's just so uber talented, and not enough people are talking about Darius Alexander. He opened a lot of eyes, and there's a lot of buzz around him now after he, dominated Mobile. But I would love for a guy like this. Where he falls, I don't know. The buzz on him is so high. You see him being, you see him being courted and mocked, early in the second round. I think there's a chance that he, because of the depth of this defensive tackle class, that he could slip to the third. But yeah, Dallas Alexander is going to be a player in the league real quick.
And at number 1, someone with a great last name for the New York Jets, Mike Green, the edge out of Marshall. Talk to us about him.
Yeah, his film was outstanding coming out of Marshall. You hope to see a lot of what he showed in film, live, and he did that and then some. He added weight, he played the season around 240, 242, and he came in, his official weight in Mobile was 255. But it didn't affect his twitchiness, his bend, his speed off the end. He only practiced 2 days because he dominated those 2 days, and he was damn near unblockable. And he's just very well developed in versus a pass, and does a good job sealing the edge, sealing off the edge and playing the run as well. But that's not what his moneymaker is. His moneymaker is getting after the quarterback, and he does it. If there's anything negative, he's not the longest guy. He's got shorter arms, but makes up for that, compensates for it by really just ridiculous first step, ridiculous contact balance. Like, he can keep balance, he can bend and dip around tackles. Like I said, it's the guy it's constantly in the backfield and pass downs. So Mike Green is a guy. Yeah, listen, you're going to hear some people. I don't know if I'm there yet, but you're going to hear some people who would be comfortable, plucking him at 7. Like, that's the kind of guy, that's the kind of talent he is. For me, if there's any way, like, I think Mike Green is a top 15, top 20 player. So if there's a way that you move down and you can get a talent like that, I think he's an instant impact player. There was, and I don't want to speak to it, but there was some buzz that, he might have some off the field red flags. And again, I haven't verified anything. I know the rumors that were being said. So I don't want to, come out and say it, but I guess there were some allegations and stuff like that that came out when he was from Virginia that went hush hush, which is why he transferred out of Virginia to Marshall. So could that affect his draft stock? Yes. If all those things, get vetted out and find out that there's some substance, behind the rumors. So I just really, it's good when your evaluation of a guy's film really matches what you see live. And that's what I got out of Mike Green. That's what I got. And then some, like I said, because he came in bigger, he came in stronger. We all saw the viral rep of him going right through Josh Connerly, who's a first-round pick. You saw him, show that there's no one in this class that can convert speed to power like him. Very reminiscent to me of, oh my God, who am I trying to think? What is the guy's name? Why can't I think? Who was the guy? Carl Lawson. How Carl Lawson could, Carl Lawson could really, win with speed and then convert that and go right through the blockers and really convert that to power. Very reminiscent of that, except he finishes, he's not just a pressure machine, he's a sack artist.
Now, players that I didn't see you put on your list that I thought we were going to see, tight end. No tight ends on your list coming down from the Senior Bowl.
There were great tight ends. I could have swore I had one on the list. Maybe we missed one, and that's okay. But yeah, there was great tight ends at the Senior Bowl. Elijah Arroyo probably was the best one there. He did the most for his stock. I wouldn't be surprised if he's, the third tight end off the board after probably, Warren and Loveland, who are all but locks to go in the first round. It wouldn't surprise me if he's the third one off the board. The guy just caught everything. He was faster. He was quicker. He was more nuanced of a route runner than anyone else that was at Mobile. He's just got a really, he had 2 years of like injuries that kept him off the field. So he's a little bit older prospect. and now just coming into his own as a finding his stride now that he's healthy and past all that stuff. So he's a guy that took a big climb. Terrence Ferguson out of Oregon was a vacuum. Guy caught everything thrown his way. I think he's a really sneaky guy. He's probably a day 3 guy, but he's really sneaky in the sense that I think he's got more of that all around tight end play in him, similar to like Trey McBride, how everyone loved Trey McBride and he was like the bee's knees and so on and so forth, but it still took him a year or so to adjust. I think you could see kind of like a slow roll for a guy like that Ferguson, but I think he can, he's big enough at 260 that he can play in line and he can still, affect the pass game as well. Harold Fannin Jr. was there too. Another buzz name. Everyone loves Fannin Jr. You saw what he did. He dominated, set records in college this year at Bowling Green. I think he's a little bit one note. And he's not going to be every team's. He's not going to fit the scheme for every team, so he won't be everyone's cup of tea. But yeah, if you want a guy that if you want that power, that big or the big flex guy or that power slot, you can get out there and that can catch the ball if it's thrown wherever it's thrown, really win on mismatches. That's Harold Fannin.
I see a super chat in here from Sam. Sam's asking, what do you think about Gunnar Helm or Ariante Ursary?
Yeah, so I'll start with Ursary. Ursary had a great week. I was really high on Ursary coming into, through the summer and into the fall. I thought he could lock himself in the first round. And he didn't, kind of fell off a little bit, had some struggles during the year. He's one of those guys that people question whether he can stay at tackle or he needs to move into guard, or he might start out as a guard to eventually, move back to his original spot and tackle. But I thought he did a really good job at the Senior Bowl. My biggest question with him was he plays a little stiff, not very flexible, doesn't play with a lot of knee flexion, is really tight in his ankles and the way he moves. So that's going to cause balance problems. And especially with, NFL level pass rushers, you want to get your balance stuff in check. But for a big guy, I think he moves very well. I think he moves great in space. He's a really, one of the better dominant run blockers. So I think he can last at right tackle. So, I think he did enough service for himself that as long as he doesn't bomb the combine and whatever interviews he gets, he's going to be in that mix for late first, early second round guy. Now, Gunnar Helm, one of my favorite in the class. He's actually my third rated tight end, behind Warren and Loveland. I think he's the best pure blocking tight end, but he's not just a blocker. That's the thing. I think he blocks the best for the position. So I know that he can play in line. He knows he's not the fastest. He's fast enough. He understands defenses. He can find those soft spots in the zone. He's a reliable target, although he might not be a focal point target. He's that reliable 2 or 3. A little bit better of a blocker, a little bit less of a receiver than Sam Laporta. But I could see a instant impact like Sam Laporta had in Detroit for Gunnar Helm.
That gets me excited. The second round is kind of where I've circled my tight end need. Like I feel like that's such a vital, important position, especially given the weakness we have at it currently. Yeboah is a free agent, Conklin's free agent, Jeremy Ruckert just hasn't really developed into the tight end we were kind of hoping he would flourish into. If you had to kind of you think defense at 7, then you go tight end in the second, and then you start thinking D tackle and some of those safety linebackers in the mid rounds. Is that sort of where your head's at, or give me a rough idea of your ideal draft?
Man, I don't know, Ryan. It's so hard to say. I guess gun to my head right now. I think the better talent, the better top talent is on the defensive side of the board. So I might lean towards, one of these edge rushers at 7 and then fill in, like it or not. And I'm not saying this to be a jerk or negative, but the Jets have a ton of holes. They have a ton of holes to fill, right? They have no safeties. They have very, very little cornerback depth. They have very, very light interior defensive line depth. They have light linebacker depth, especially if all these guys don't come back that are pending free agents. I think the defense is in a lot worse shape than the offense, to be honest with you. So, gun to my head, if you're asking me, I would really hone in on the defensive side of the board with the early round picks, with maybe the exception of the tight end. Although, like I said, I like a guy like Gunnar Helm. I think he can come in and play right away. Although this is probably one of the deeper, definitely the deepest tight end class that I've seen. You're going to see 12 to 13 guys taken, and I think 12 or 13 of those guys are going to have a chance to be true NFL players, not like the 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐜s of the world, but actually come in and affect the game in a positive.
Boys and girls, we have reached the end of our show. If you've enjoyed this Senior Bowl coverage and the thoughts that Dom was able to acquire, both in his knowledge of tape and his in-person scouting with our buddy Jeremy down at the Senior Bowl, make sure you hit that like button. It goes a long way towards helping us grow this channel. Dom, anything else you want to tell these people out here in the chat?
No, man. A lot more stuff and kind of in the weed prospect stuff coming out now, not only on this channel, but and through other outlets that I have. You can always hop on if you're interested with draft related, not just Jets related, but draft related content on Project Prospect with Dom C on YouTube. A lot of stuff coming out there and here, and I'm sure I'll be all over the place and spitting out the stuff that I enjoy.
Yeah, we're going to be doing some mock drafts here in the coming weeks, probably after Super Bowl. I don't know if it'll be next week or the week after that, but we'll start going through our lists. We might involve so Green Bean does his 10 o'clock mock, which is great. He does it with Dom. They have a theme every week. So we played around with the idea of maybe starting the theme across a few different shows to carry it through a night to see how different combinations could potentially pop up. So it gives you a lot of content to potentially watch here on Talkin Jets and throughout the nights on Monday night. But boys and girls, thank you so much for hanging out with us. It's been a lot of fun. We'll see you here next week.